Morning, everybody. This is Waypoint. Thank you guys very much for stopping by. And I'm just going to get right into the video. Obviously, there are three things that we talk about in this video, which is one is traveling, two, not financial advice, and three, cTheories. But as you can see in the background over here, that I got a VR headset on, and that's one of the things that I do. And in this certain instance, we were coming to the penultimate of the lockdown out here in Ecuador. So that's the first part I'm going to talk about and show you guys the video of me playing one of the games, a shooting game that's out there. And Sophia happened to take a video of me playing. So it was really hot that day. So part of the reason for that was I had the fan going. But as you can see, it's a super immersive experience, and it looks like I'm actually shooting a gun in this instance here. Whoops, what'd I do? Maybe if I click back. Oh. So I gotta shrink it and then do this. So as you can see, right. Now, keep in mind, I was actually playing and testing software and things like that throughout the whole pandemic. But one of the things that I did want to show is that I did have a HTC Vive. So I had the lighthouses, which are the infrared sensors that sweep the room to determine where the location is. Unfortunately, because the temperatures itself was actually pretty loud with the fan going, because my computer was just my laptop was overheating just to run the HTC Vive. I had to have a fan set up, as you can see, like I showed in the previous video. I used these racks to be able to set up like a desk that was a little bit higher. Prior to that, I was using toilet paper. But over a period of time during the lockdown, when Sophia and I were able to go to the grocery store, one of the things that I picked up, actually a handful of these, we have quite a few of these, but very useful in regards to using the laptop and letting air go through the intake, which is at the bottom. So like having the bottom covered would actually cause the laptop to not take in as much air. In this instance, what I did was I just applied a cloth to be able to kind of filter out the air that was being forced into the intake, and then on top of that, maintain its temperature levels. It worked fairly well, but a little distracting if you're playing games, while on the road. Obviously, with the HTC Vive, probably not one of the most efficient ways of enjoying VR on the road. However, at the time, that's what I had, and that's kind of my spare unit now, because originally I was actually renting that for my company, and then I ended up purchasing the equipment later on. So one of the things that Sophia and I would do in this instance, I actually had the chance to cook. So I cooked some pizza, and basically those were chorizos, I believe, was the type of salchichas, which is the type of sausages that was there. I made my own tomato sauce with some tomato paste, and then obviously added some mozzarella cheese, and basically just used the baguettes that they were selling at the grocery store. So that's what I did was I made pizza, and then we invited Sophia's sister and her boyfriend over for lunch. When the lockdowns were still going on at the time, but we were kind of like at the edge of it completing. So we would spend a little bit more time with everyone as time passed. This is a quick video of us at the beach. One of the things that we would do during the lockdowns was go to the beach and just go for the walk for like a half an hour to 40 minutes. And kind of curious was finding these blowfish that were washed up on shore, or at least what we perceived to be washed up on shore. I almost feel like they were placed there, but I could be wrong. But it was just kind of a strange coincidence that we would find the blowfish during the pandemic. So I ended up filming it. and luckily I had my cell phone with me to be able to record the video.
That's incredible.
But just kind of strange. They look like they were
Don't
both
want to touch that. That's super dangerous.
they were both passed away.
That's
And I
why
want to
it's
say
safe when we're out
too
here.
that the day before Sophia and I went to the
Maybe
beach, we didn't actually
because
see these fish out there. So
there's less people out
I don't know,
here,
just kind of a
maybe.
strange
There's no
coincidence,
more of
right?
these fish right here. That's kind of
Another view of the beach. And keep in mind too, so there are oil rigs, um, farther in the ocean that you can actually see from the beach area. And you're probably curious about, some of this black color from the sand. And Sophia believes that this black color is actually from the discoloration of the oil. Not in any way dangerous, but it's one of those curious things that you find that because the oil rigs themselves are fairly close and they are extracting the oil from the ocean bottom, not too far from shore. I mean, it's still a good, couple of miles out, but because there is a terminal and also a refinery right by the beach area, and that's one of the ways that they would transport and refine the oil. So just kind of a thing that I took a picture of just to show people. This is this is extreme vodka, and it's not too expensive, but it's surprisingly a very good quality vodka that's made here in Ecuador. And you actually can't find it in every store, but luckily in Santa Elena, it's quite ubiquitous. You can actually find it at a lot of the liquor stores that are out here. But it's actually really good, like really really good. And I don't drink a lot of beer. I don't drink a lot, period. But there are moments in time when there it calls to celebrate and also maybe every now and then have a drink or two during the evening or during the day, whatever you like doing. But extreme vodka, surprisingly very tasty. You don't wake up with a destructive hangover, but you do get that buzz that you want. And again, this was there was actually one evening I think I drank like half the bottle. I'd hate to admit that, but I did, and that's without actually drinking previously, and I was drinking it straight up, and obviously I got pretty buzzed. But I woke up the next morning with no major issues. I do kind of the normal stuff like I drink a lot of water right before I go to bed, and but yeah, so if you guys are ever in Ecuador, maybe I'll bring some over to the U.S. But really good vodka. Very impressed with the quality and the taste. And another great measure about, in my opinion, having good vodka or good alcohol in general is when you wake up the next morning. How do you feel? And you know what? Um, not hungover. So one thing to keep in mind, right? This was actually one of the drinks that's actually I don't remember. I want to say this was one of the blackberry drinks with the vodka that we were making, and then eventually I got to the point where I was just drinking the vodka straight up. But this was a drink that Sophia made with the juices there. This is a very messy setup. As you can see, there is the lighthouse for the ACC Vive, as I was showing earlier. You have the ACC Vive over here. And then on certain situations where I don't have the laptop propped up, however, I do want to use the laptop to and maintain good temperature levels. And not surprisingly, the temperatures itself during this time, this was in June, the temperature is really high. So my laptop would actually heat up a little bit, but a little messy setup there. I mean, I think it's really difficult to maintain cable management while on the road. So I had to kind of ad hoc put the sensors up and set up the headset where at least it was reasonably clean. And this was the best I could do. And obviously, I have my notebook set up at the bottom there. Now, throughout the pandemic and throughout when I'm traveling, one of the things that I do is I do development, and the development that I work on is very specific to virtual reality and augmented reality. More towards virtual reality, but getting things VR ready. And this is a web-based. This is a web-based tour of the Waypoint Cafe, which was the original concept of why these videos were being started. Because Cruz and myself were partners in this process, but I was in the side of kind of visualizing what the restaurant could be, and the restaurant itself was actually, so we were coming up with concepts, and one of it was a 3,000 square foot restaurant, and one of the ways that we could help visualize it a lot easier was to put it in augmented reality or virtual reality. So what we did this kind of mock um, setup here of how much space we actually had to work with and what it would look like. And this in itself is not actually running as augmented reality. This is actually just being experienced via the phone. As you can see, I have actually wrote the code in Google Apps scripts where you can run HTML, CSS, and JavaScript directly from there. And this is just kind of demonstrating, you know, what the place looked like at a very early stage with, nice textures, or at least working on the textures, and, just again getting a rough visualization of what it looked like. One of the great things about the pandemic lockdown was being able to enjoy some of the many great foods that Sophia cooked. And again, one of the key points, one of the key aspects I think that people are really going to enjoy when they do get the chance to come out here in Ecuador, which I've been enjoying while I've been here, is the fresh food, but also kind of one of the two, possibly the two best things out there in the world is plantains. So most dishes are served with plantains, which we have here in the bag, and then fresh juice. This is fresh lemonade that Sophia made with the lemons, and then in typical Ecuadorian fashion with serving food, there's food that's served with soup, and then the main dish itself. So there was some chicken, some frijoles, which is beans, and then rice. So you got a smorgasbord of a lot of different combinations of food. But again, one of my favorite things is having plantains, and then also lemonade. So in so it might seem like the videos themselves are kind of disparate and disorganized, but you can kind of see the evolution of the Waypoint Cafe restaurant, which the first concept was showing it on a different platform, which is web based, and then this is more client side on a PC, so you can really up the fidelity of the quality. And in this instance, it's just kind of demonstrating the real time lighting, and obviously kind of fancy, camera work and stuff like that. But you can see the kind of the shadow work and stuff going on, some of the reflections from the metal surfaces, and then one of the ways that I wanted to kind of build a better understanding of the atmosphere was working with the lighting. So I worked with a day and night setup, and then having light emit from the from the different light sources inside the building itself. So again, you can see kind of just this was a visual test of how what type of atmosphere we were looking for to help visualize it. And again, different way to see how we were coming up with a concept, but on top of that, running these tests to see what it would look like in a higher fidelity setup. There are limitations when you're running things in web VR. Obviously, the hardware itself that you go to experience it, if you are running it from the web. But with something like this, if you have a powerful PC, you're really going to get a very high quality setup where you can use all the bells and whistles that these engines are capable of. More dishes. I didn't explain this before, but But yuca it's a ubiquitous dish out here, and it really goes well with a lot of things. But on top of that, as chips, they're absolutely amazing, and it's something that I believe that everyone should try. And it could be a really good substitute for things like potato chips because they're unique. They're very starchy, but they're when they're fried and then made into chips, they're actually a lot harder than potato chips. And I find that the texture itself is very competitive to potato chips. And keep in mind too, potatoes are very popular as well because there's a large variety here in Ecuador that people try, and I think that's one of the great benefits about this area. In South America, even Peru has a number of different varieties of potatoes, and same thing with Ecuador that people have during their meals. And I can tell you what, this is just a great addition to enjoying some of the rich food that's out here, that's super fresh. So I definitely enjoy having things like yuca with eggs, which is what's here on this plate. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So as the lockdowns were coming to a close or coming to an open, however you interpret it, again, Sophia and I would invite people to have lunch, because if the curfew was still going on, there would only be a limited time where people could come by, and we'd have food prepared. So one of the things that we would do is we would grill outside. So I had this small grill. It was very short, and at the time, I have to say this: my stock portfolio was really really low. I mean, extremely low, and I'm not going to fake anything there. It was really tough, but luckily, over a period of time, just made a lot of different shifts. I was able to get myself out of the rut. But one of the ways for myself to be able to enjoy kind of some of those successes that I've had over the course of time, was treating ourselves to certain things like this, where I bought, this was a grill that was maybe like $15, $20. And, looking back at it, it was just, I wouldn't say it was monumental, but it was definitely something where I do treat myself, as well as the people around me, to when I hit those certain points where, okay, cool, things went well, then I'll proceed with treating, uh, giving myself and others gifts. And this was one of the ways that I was very grateful to be able to get myself out of the rut. And a small thing was just to be able to get the small grill, which was, like I said, $15, $20 or something like that. So we got some coals, we got that heated up, and I mean, I don't know, maybe I guess this might be the American in me, but I love grilling. And then so it was taking a long time to heat up the coals. So I needed a way to accelerate the speed of getting the embers of that fire going a lot faster. So in order to do that, I just grabbed an extension cord and then grabbed a fan, and here I am with a fan, having the fan blow air on the coals there, and that heated up much faster. So I wanted to show you guys like what this was like. Oh my god, this was hilarious. I mean, look at that. So if you're running, so a little background too. That fan is no is finally reached its end. Unfortunately, it still works. The engine, the motor still works, but I guess it's a fairly old fan, and the rod that connects to the blades actually chewed up the bearings inside, so it just jams every now and then. So I took it apart, and I have it as kind of like a side project that maybe I can get to at some point, if Sophia and I aren't doing other things. But otherwise, yeah. So here I am heating heating the coals, and I'll tell you what, this helped speed it up. So I'm going to turn up the volume on this so that you guys can hear the sizzling of the pork that I was cooking, and I did all these like dramatic shots because I wanted to show how it was cooking, and I was originally going to make like a B-roll set of a montage video of this, but it's been over a year now, so now I just have this collection of videos, so I figured that I'd show it here. But again, here's some seasoning, some marinade that Sophia made, and then I'm the grill master at this point. Oh yeah, cool. So I totally forgot that this video I was able to do in slow motion. I mean, just look at that. You know, I was having a good time. I mean, that's one of the great things, right? When you're grilling and cooking, that you do have time to do other stuff. So one of the things that I was doing was actually filming the cooking, because it did take a little bit of time. I felt like the coals themselves were very well balanced with the heat, so I had time to film it, and that's one of the things that I'm showing here. So at the apartment out in Bayanita, which is the next town over from from where we are in Santa Elena. So excuse the the video quality here is upside down, but I think it's going to be kind of fun to watch.
Again.
So just about every day, I would open the gate so that the dog could hang out, and what we would do is do these exercises where I would call Coco, which is the name of the dog, and then ask it to run back and forth, and just to stretch its legs, and Coco seemed to enjoy that. Now another thing about this was that Coco's owner actually got stuck in the Galapagos. So the owner of the house actually was feeding the dog on a regular basis, but there was no person to take care of the dog, or kind of just say hello. So that was one of the things that Sophia and I would do. And now, if you guys are familiar with pit bulls, man, these dogs they're just a chunk of muscle, like just straight muscle. And this dog is no different. Despite not exercising on a regular basis, just the sheer strength that this dog had, like just jumping, I mean, could jump so high with very little effort. And it was just kind of an interesting aspect to see, with the dog. But also, when it jumped towards you, it was like a huge boulder coming at you, and then you'd have to be very careful with the dog. But very very nice dog, but can be very intimidating because of what it is. A beautiful dog in itself. I grew up with dogs, and as I get older, I like dogs even more. I like animals even more, and it's just a blessing in Ecuador that a lot of people have dogs and cats and a lot of different animals. That it's a big animal culture here in Ecuador, so that's a very inviting aspect that I think people in the U.S. would be would adapt to very easily, considering that the U.S. too is big with animals as well. More food that Sophia cooked. I believe this was also chicken. So I want to point this out. So just today, I finished eating some leftovers of lasagna that Sophia and her mother cooked the other day, because we bought this Pyrex dish on top of obviously the ingredients to make lasagna. And I know that some friends, Cruz and Randall, before pointed out that out here in Ecuador, there's people eat a substantial amount of carbohydrates, and this is a prime example of the amount of carbohydrates that people eat. And I didn't point this out in the other picture, but here is some pasta, and then also with rice. And I know that seems like it's a little overboard, but believe it or not, it actually just works really well, and it's something that I would highly recommend doing. Maybe not at the portions there, because if you guys are sensitive to having too much carbs, this might be a little bit too much. But it's something that you should try out. And on top of that, Sophia made this juice mix with the juice pieces and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, again, I can't point out enough. I mean, one of the great joys about being able to come out here, and I'm very grateful that Sophia is a wonderful cook, and I get to enjoy these types of dishes while I'm out here in Ecuador. Obviously, when I'm out in the U.S., my eating habits are a lot different, but it's a nice little break. Half the year I spend in the U.S. or another country, and then the other half I spend in Ecuador. And this is one of the great joys about being able to come back and then having some fresh juice with a bountiful meal. So one of the ways I've stayed in shape over the course of the years, not just during the lockdowns, is that I do push-ups, pull-ups, and I run. And I believe I did 50 here. Not really sure. So all you push-up and pull-up police that are out there saying that I'm going too fast or I'm not going low enough, you know what? Why don't you do 200 push-ups, 4 sets of 50, all right? This is something that I do on a regular basis. I don't do it on Monday because I have the videos, but one of the ways to stay in shape is just to keep in motion. And this is not only just to stay in shape, but also to stay strong, but also keep that blood flow going. So again, this is just a one example. So this was a year ago. So from a year ago all the way up till today, I've been doing at minimum 200 push-ups a week, and that typically just happens in one day. And as you can see, that was maybe about 40 seconds of exercise, so not a large amount of time. A continuation of again, so it seems like a lot of the pictures aren't very well organized, but they're actually organized in the sense of time. So some of these projects that I do work on happen after a course of time. So, there might be a project that I started in March and then I finish it in June. This one in particular actually was finished in one day, but well, that's actually not true. So the modeling aspect of the pictures were done in a previous time, and then I tested working on a different platform. The code's a little bit different when working with augmented reality, and the picture in the background is actually just a hand-drawn in ballpoint pen of a logo to make the augmented reality, to test the augmented reality experience using WebVR. And this was actually, I posted a video of this, and it's actually part of a thumbnail for my other YouTube channel where I focus on things like this, like how to experience VR if you have a VR headset, but also some development work. So on that channel, I focus on that. But this was a picture that I captured. Sophia was actually at her parents' house at the time, and I was at the apartment by myself. So obviously, this is the type of stuff that I do when I'm by myself. So it's very clear that I can keep myself very well entertained. But this was a successful demo of the Waypoint Cafe in augmented reality, where you could have any particular logo that you wanted, actually even pictures and geolocation. But those I haven't tested. I only tested the pictures, being able to use the pictures. And the reason why I did a ballpoint pen drawing was because I wanted to see how well the software was going to be able to recognize even a rough sketch. And surprisingly, it did it very well. So that was a prime test example of like, oh, this actually works pretty well. And even if the picture itself is not at a very high fidelity, the software is able to recognize, being able to execute when a picture, even though it's not that high quality, will still execute. So I wanted to be able to point that out there. Another project that was kind of happening simultaneously during the augmented reality testing virtual reality for the Waypoint Cafe was also I entered a contest with this guy Fancy, to build a game in a week. We ended up finishing the game. It was very rough around the edges and it had a lot of bugs. But he and I had different portions that we were responsible for. So he had some characters that he worked on and levels that he worked on, and then I had several levels, and then I had what I was, at least from indirectly, we were working on different things. But one of the issues that we were running into was working out some of the bugs to even get the headset to run on different headsets, and that was for virtual reality. So I was doing a lot of the debugging for getting it to run on the headset, working on a limited number of characters and levels. And he had several levels as well as characters that he was working on. But it was a lot of interactive stuff, and there was a lot of bugs that we had in the game. So in essence, it is done, but there is like one part of the game where once you pass this one part, the game logic loop runs, and it causes the game itself to run very slowly. So if you're running it on a slower machine, a slower computer, it's going to bog down quite a bit. And like I said, there was a bunch of stuff that we worked on this, but I was one of the key aspects here was I worked on this was so I worked on adding some character to the levels. So he had all the different levels, but I was adding kind of the different aesthetics. So what you see here is this thing called displacement, where you can randomize these polygons, to give it so that they're all kind of shifted a little bit differently. And so yeah, we didn't finish it, we didn't submit it, but we did. We finished it. There was a lot of bugs, and there's a thing called cooking when you're building the game. But we didn't finish it, and the game had bugs, but it was done, and it was a good test. It was in the future. I'd like to work again with this guy because we worked really well together. But yeah, it's tough. If you ever made a game before and go through the process of it, it's very difficult. There's a lot of aspects to game making that you go into, that when you're building the game, and then you could be building the game, but you will run across issues where the game doesn't work. And if you're not familiar with some of the aspects of building one, it can be, you could be chasing shadows, right, in the middle of the night, trying to find where the bugs are happening. And there was a lot of bugs, and we were able to fix several of them, but not all of them, unfortunately. So these were different aspects that we were different portions of the game, as you can see. So there's uh, uh, I'm not going to go into detail about this. I think that'll bore everybody. But there are different areas of how the level works and things like that. And then this was just showing some examples of the levels themselves. So fun little time doing that. It was a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights, but it was something that it was definitely really cool. It was a good learning experience. So when that project was done, one of the things that Sophia and I did was, like I said, we go for walks, and this is a beach area. This is actually heading towards Libertad, which is more, I want to say, north and east of Santa Elena or Bayonita. And along the way, there was a number of abandoned buildings that were there, but perched up on a small peninsula from the mainland, that I wanted to take a picture of. And again, really cool architecture, great spot. But again, abandoned buildings, but a great way to kind of preserve what was there is just taking a picture of it. And one of the aspects about this particular area, beautiful area by the way, but the roadways that go to these places are not very accessible. So I think that's part of the reason why some of these places became abandoned over time. And as you can see, there's actually a Wu-Tang symbol there. But really great vantage point as far as getting to see the ocean. Great walking area. It's safe. Sophia and I went there during like a late day walk. So I took a bunch of pictures along the way. We were going to try to make a Libertad, which I believe we did. We did make it to Libertad. And there was an abandoned fish factory that was there, right by the ocean. I think part of the issue too, as you'll see in some of this infrastructure, is that the waters at this particular part of the beach is actually quite turbulent. And again, some of these areas themselves are not very accessible from the main roads. So when you're passing by the towns and then you're trying to get to these areas, they're not as, if you're going to have like a large delivery truck come in and then leave, it's not as easy to get through. But regardless of what it is, it shows kind of the remnants of kind of the different industries that were in this particular area. In some instances, there were hotels. In this picture right here, where I have several slides of the factories, you'll see that it's quite large and it's still fenced off, but it's been dilapidated for quite some time. But again, you can kind of just see the infrastructure that was there. But again, just being so close to a spot where the ocean water can be pretty turbulent, and the picture doesn't do a good job of showing that. But this particular area, like I said, you'll see pieces of the building itself kind of just outstretched on the beach. And regardless of what it is, it was just kind of a beautiful spot to see. And then again, it's like you go back in time and you kind of imagine what the place was like when it was fully running. And you can see just like some of the where some of the water drained, maybe where the bathrooms were. But it also shows kind of a testament of the engineering too. Was actually pretty well built. I mean, look, you got this platform here, this, or it could be a ceiling, that looks like it's cantilevered, but that's just holding strong. It hasn't collapsed. And that's it's very for me, I'm impressed by things like that, to see that it's still is structurally sound. Obviously, like I said, over a period of time, if you're near the ocean too, things are going to rust and corrode and get destroyed a lot faster. However, this place in particular has held up pretty well, despite all that. So I don't know. It was just kind of a beautiful thing to see. And uh, Sophia was very supportive of me taking a lot of pictures. And this is only some of the pictures of 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 this particular place. This was I don't want to say if it was a dock. It might have been a dock, but that stretches right to the ocean. And again, the water here is actually quite turbulent, which makes it suitable for things like surfing. So there's actually several surfers that were out here hanging out. But obviously, it could be pretty dangerous too because there's a lot of stones. I don't think there's a sandbar at the bottom of the ocean right by the beach. So you're playing with fire, when you're out here. Again, more pictures. I don't know. I was just really fascinated. Oh, I did take a video. Okay. Okay, so I have this in slow motion, and it might show the waves crashing on that kind of dock area. So you have the dock area, and then there's like the actual platform bottom area. Okay, so you can see the ships in the background, and then no, unfortunately, I did not have a picture of the ocean crashing on the beach there. So On the way back, again, so that same peninsula that I was talking about earlier had several people, some fishermen that were coming back from going out in the ocean. So I took a picture of that and the video, and I got up and close and personal. Actually, got a close up of what they caught. So it's like a pretty big event, but it was really cool to see and be there at that time. So we were at the right place at the right time to be able to grab this video. And this is leaving the beach area, showing that, again, at least at this side, it's gonna be it's gonna be a little bit difficult to it's gonna be a little bit difficult to get to the beach, where you have to climb down, a set of boulders and things like that. But the access to some of the other spots are, well, a little bit difficult to get to. As the lockdowns opened up, and I was reaching the point of heading back to the U.S., it was June 30th, where the the borders have opened up, the airports have opened up. I was able to I actually changed my flights several times, and Sophia's family did a really nice thing and made burritos and tacos, because they know I like burritos and tacos. So they made, so here is guacamole. You have mayonnaise with some seasoning, which was very delicious, and then pico de gallo. Absolutely amazing. It was a huge meal that they had. This was the filling that you would put in. I maybe had like three or four, and then after that I was just super full. And then we're back at the apartment, and again, more kind of, my virtual reality stuff that I was doing. So I was running tests. So there's a few tests that I run. So one working with CAD, and the other one transferring that over into a virtual space. So in order to do that, I practice and run tests in regards to uh, putting stuff together. So I wanted to make this kind of this frame that had a curve on all sides, and then transfer that over. And the demo itself has that. Like in this particular instance here, these were actually, I was making kind of panels that would go through, but it was actually because this wasn't a specific CAD exercise, it was more of a visualization exercise. So I actually did that afterwards. I created the square boxes afterwards, which which is actually much faster. And if you guys are familiar with working with CAD or 3D modeling software, all you really do is you apply a Boolean. More exercises, and this is actually provided just like the other pictures, as an exercise for visualization. And I actually use this I-beam as a main beam at the top. If you guys see the demo that's on the other YouTube channel and my VR Story LLC website, it'll have this, in the dimensions, the drawing, and the 3D model are actually available open source, so you guys can take that. But this was a study of the dimensions for I-beams that I grabbed, or excuse me, that I built. Again, just to study the dimensions, and transfer that over for visualization. More food, as you can see. I did gain quite a bit of weight while I was in Ecuador. I'll admit, I've actually gained quite a bit of weight since I've been here, because it's almost been 2 months now. So yeah, I eat quite a bit while I'm out here, and I don't exercise at the highest level. And because we were prepping for any situation, Sophia and I were growing plants, and this is an example of us growing some beans, which actually sprouted very quickly. I posted this. I posted this on Instagram a while back ago, where I was doing some juggling with some garlic, have a little fun there. Oh, this is just me doing more push-ups. You guys don't see that. cooking some burgers. Again, we had some people over, so we cooked some burgers, the frozen burgers. And keep in mind, if you guys do come out here in Ecuador, um, frozen foods are a lot more expensive than you would find in the U.S. So just kind of keep that in mind. These were good. Sophia and I like the quality of these burgers. They shrunk quite a bit, a little expensive. I think they were like $5 or $6 for a box of 10. But again, very low volume of burgers. But we like the quality, we like the flavor, so we ended up picking them up. But we ended up inviting people over to have some burgers, and this is us cooking them. So again, kind of demonstrating exercising out here. So the gyms were closed, and I needed to work the opposite muscle groups, right? So if you're exercising, I think I do like 12 or 13 pull-ups here. No kips, okay? Again, on a weekly basis. This was before I started doing 2 sets of 20 because I didn't want to spend too much time exercising. I wanted to just exercise for maybe 10, 15 minutes, which is typical fashion when I'm not in competition mode, where I'm just trying to maintain my strength and maintain my health. So uh, at this point, I was doing 4 sets of 10, and then in certain instances, I would do about 12 or 13 just to test to see how much I could do at one time, and then eventually I just got to the 2 sets of 20 because I was too lazy. This is Snoopy. I know he looks like a super big dog, but he's actually super tiny. The perspective from the iPhone camera is, well, once something gets close to the camera, the perspective itself changes quite dramatically. But very tiny dog, probably about half the size of what this picture suggests. And then Sophia's turtle. So I took a picture of this guy who seems to like going to our side of the patio. Um, this was actually before we moved to the house next door of our parents' house. And then to finalize, this is a shot of the Bayanita Beach, which, as you can see, even with the ships in the background, it's a beautiful sight just to go to. And we actually went out there the other night just to check it out, and there was a lot of people there, so it was wonderful. It was wonderful to see so many people. And on top of that, when you're going towards sunset, you get to see one of these great vistas of the beach area. And not a lot of people out there swimming, but people do go out there and swim, and it's a great time to go. So let's get to not financial advice. So this one, I'm actually going to look at a very specific company, and I'm going to talk about specific things with this company. And this company is called SynLogix. That's based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. Now, Buddy brought it up. I don't know if he was trying to virtue signal, showing me that, oh, the stock went up at whatever price point, things like that. But I think my personal opinion was that he wanted to get my opinion on it, and also to be able to look at it much further. Now, let's get into it. So, because I'm filming this around 11, well, I started filming like around 11:30, and then we're going into 12:30. As you can see, their website is down. And like I said, I didn't know this. Obviously, I prepared this video a little bit earlier and rehearsed some of the things that I wanted to talk about. But their website's down. I don't know for whatever reason, but it's down. But let's look at things a little bit deeper here, okay? So on a chart basis, and I'm not going to spend too much time with this in particular, but what we're going to do is actually I don't think we can actually check things in a month. All right, let me open up Yahoo Finance here, and then we're going to go to SYBX, which is the symbol of this stock. Sierra Yankee Bravo X-ray is the symbol. Okay, SYBX, sign logic. All right, let's look at the 6-month chart. Well, look at that. I'm not a chart reader. but you can extrapolate some information just by looking at the chart itself. So what does this indicate? So the first thing that we want to point out, right? Okay, the price is at 365 and it seems to gyrate. So it looks like in certain instances, and if you've checked the conversations on not just on Yahoo Finance, but on other social media outlets that talk about stocks, as a lot would say, this would be a pump and dump, flat out. Okay. The volume itself, so today it's about 1/4 of its volume, so not a very high volume stock. But as you can see, it stays at a relatively close range, right, in the charts where it climbs up and then it dips. It climbs up and then it dips. It climbs up and then it dips. So we have to ask ourselves, well, last week, right, Buddy's pointing out, oh, the stock went up from 355 to 380. Okay, well, what's that all about? Well, why don't we dig a little bit deeper into what's going on with this company? Now, here's an issue that we're running into. We can't check with what's going on with this company right now because their website is down for whatever reason, right? However, the information regarding the company is available to the public. So one of the ways that you want to do that is you want to go, and this is, again, not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but this is one of the ways that you want to build an understanding of what these companies are all about. These are publicly traded companies, which means that they have publicly available information. So in this instance right here, it's the 10Q. It's one of their quarterly reports, right? And to build a better understanding about what this company is doing, they describe a bunch of different things. So they're a genetics company. I think they particularly focus on bowel syndrome, so issues with the bowel syndrome, but they're mainly working with genetic changes in the body. I don't know the heavy specifics about it, but you can extrapolate that from their website, which is currently down, but also looking at their financial reports, which gives you a view of a particular time, but also some of the description that they talk about of what the company does. Now I want to talk about this a little bit further here, okay? Because when we're looking at a balance sheet, right? We're like, oh, cash and cash equivalents. Well, this is at the thousand, so they got 26 million, and then a total of current assets of 101, 197. So 101 million dollars of assets, and then total assets. So excuse me, over here, the total current assets, and then the total assets itself. One of the reasons why they call balance sheets is because assets and liabilities balance out. Okay, so and it really comes down to how information is being reported, right? So you have 135 million, and then for liabilities you have 135 million. Wow, not too difficult to understand, right? Now, there's other aspects that we want to take into consideration, and if you guys have the time to double check what I'm talking about, but one of the aspects that you want to understand is, where are they getting their cash and cash equivalents, right? You don't want to just be like, oh, hey, look, Phil, the stock price went up to 418, right? And not understanding why something is happening. Well, if you dig a little bit deeper into a company like SYBX, and what we're going to do is we're going to jump back and forth between the SEC filing, and then we're also going to look at the profile that they have or the information that's available on Yahoo Finance. And Yahoo Finance is not the only way that you have. It's just something that I have open right now on this particular browser that will kind of just open up Pandora's box here a little bit. Okay, so historical data is looking at just, you can set the ranges and the spans of of what the activity is. So, the amount of trades, how much it costs, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to look at profile, and then we're going to look at holders. And a key thing to point out before we do that, the earnings per share. So earnings per share, earnings over share count. So they're not making money. They're not making money, right? They're burning through cash. Now, their website's down. But one thing to point out, this company, they have a number of different products that they sell, or excuse me, that they're producing as a drug manufacturer or a drug research company, right? They're not a drug, so they're not actually manufacturing and distributing. They're a research and development, right? They're in phase 2, okay? Phase 2 is not out to market. They're still in their research phase. Does that mean that they're not going to be able to get out to market like Moderna, Pfizer, and other things like that for certain treatments? No. However, in a normal course of FDA approval, right? I'm not a scientist, but I've been looking at things like this over the course of several years, almost more than a decade. And one of the things to point out is that this company, quite frankly, is not a company that's making revenue from selling drugs. However, that does not impede the company from doing well itself in its research and development stage. And that's one of the things that I really want to point out for this type of company. In my opinion, if you look at a company like this that's at a very early stage where they don't actually produce a product to deliver to an end user or to deliver through a distribution channel, it doesn't mean that the company itself will do bad in the long term. It just means that there are certain factors that will both impede and help the company succeed, whether or not they're generating revenue. So let's look at those key points to be able to understand that a little bit better. Now, keep in mind, like I said, this is not financial advice. This is just opening up Pandora's box to make a better decision about maybe you might be interested in picking up a company like this as part of your portfolio, and you can make a decision for yourself. So to sum it up real quick before I get into a little bit more detail. So at a company like this that's in phase 2 of their drug process, that gives them another 2 to 5 or even 6 years out before they even get to go out to market. It's going to be a long process because they have to do a lot of these clinical trials. There's preclinical trials. There's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then they have to get approval by the FDA, and then they can go out to market. So there's still a number of steps that they have to acquire, they have to complete before getting out to market. Now, with that, like I was saying, it doesn't mean that the company itself is not going to do well, because that's not necessarily the case, especially now since there are a lot more people in the stock market getting involved, that things like momentum and awareness could actually help grow the company. Actually, just go this way, help grow the company just on the basis of it becoming part of people's consciousness and awareness that this company exists. All right. So the company itself doesn't even have to be a legitimate company to be able to be successful in the stock market, or for you to be successful in the stock market. It really comes down to a lot of different factors. However, you want to be able to hedge your risks by understanding why a company like this is, at the price point that it is, and why it attracts certain groups of people, right? Because again, there's not just one factor, but we're going to go into a little bit deeper on where the price points are, and then kind of understand, what strategy I would instill for myself with something like this. So as we look at the profile, okay, as I was saying before, it was based in Cambridge, Mass. It's a number of employees. and start putting some of these numbers into perspective, right? So when you look at cash and cash equivalents, and then if you look at the revenue stream, so we can see here just on the basis of the executives, right? If you start doing the math, just the executives alone make up about $2 million. The top three here that post their pay amount makes up about over $2 million of the money that's being circulated within this company itself. And that's what we'll just assume, just based on this general information, that we're not getting information about what their stock incentives are, as far as, employee benefits. We're just assuming that, okay, this is what they make on paper, cash wise, and that's what their basis is. So when I look at a number like 72 employees, that's not in my opinion, it's not a large manufacturer. Or at least they have a lot of researchers that are working on this, right? So let's look at another aspect that we want to take into consideration here. And again, this is just an overview, just to kind of build a framework for better decision making, right? Because, a buddy will send me information, a friends will send me info like, oh, hey, look at this company, it went up this amount, blah blah blah. It's like, do you know why, right? You got to ask yourself why. And I'm not saying that, like I said, I'm not trying to pick on my buddies or anything like that, but having seen this kind of stuff regularly, I want to understand why. So when we look at, okay, well, the company has to be getting money some way, somehow, in order to operate. Well, look at this. 12% of the shareholders are insiders. 38.49, which is a very high amount, is owned by institutions, and then 43.8% of the float is held by institutions. So this is a heavily backed company, or a heavily institution backed company that's available. So as we can see, based on the reported date of holding, the NEA Management Atlas, I'm sure you're going to find, you're going to find the Vanguard Group. You might even, at some point, find BlackRock, right? So this information that's here, and as of reported date, shows that this company gets their funding from institutions. Now, if you delve a little bit deeper, besides looking at news articles, and you actually look at the company reports, which will jump back into the SEC filing in this 10Q, you're going to find that, and I'm not going to see, AstraZeneca, I think, is the Astra. No, okay. This company is actually partnered with another company. So a larger biotech company is helping provide funding for this company to produce some certain drug. And whatever their terms are in regards to, in terms of, what the split is on the prospect of this growing. And the key word is prospect, okay? Because they're in phase 2, so there's a prospect of this company growing revenue in the future, right? Which is part of the reason why institutions get into it on an early basis, as the prospect, as the possible opportunity to multiply the investment. Okay, so another key factor that I want to point out, and maybe let's see, let's look at other factors here. Okay, so we're gonna try to find Okay, shareholders' equity. So in June 2019, the company issued to Ginkgo Bioworks an aggregate of 6 million shares of common stock at a purchase price of $9. So this company, SyBX, actually made out pretty well because they issued shares at $9 at pre-funded warrants. Okay, so they had a pretty substantial amount of money. You know, it's 3 times more than what the cost of the stock is. So the shares of common stock at an exercise price of $9 per share, with an $8.99 of such exercise price paid at the closing of the offering. So they received funding back in 2019 that was worth approximately $80 million. Okay, and as of March 31st of 2021, none of the pre-funded warrants have been exercised. Okay, obviously they wouldn't exercise it right now because the price is low. So I'm guessing that as a positive sign, kind of looking out into the future, that maybe the price could hit $9. Now, I'd like to consider a company like this as a race against time, considering that the economy itself, if anyone's been actually following the news or some of the data that's been out there, the economy is very weak right now. And for a company like this that does not generate a service or a product directly to an end user or end users is at, in my opinion, at risk against time, because as the economy starts to slow down and and institutions or retail investors need to cash out to make money or claim their losses, this to me could pose a high risk in that, because it's a company that's not making money. It could get diluted pretty quickly because of it carries that risk of not generating income or having revenue from selling a product or a service. So it carries with that risk. So stock purchases, again, excuse me. So AbbVie looks like is the collaborator. I was wrong. AbbVie is the collaborator, where synthetic biotic Synlogics is the one researching particular drugs. So whatever terms that they have, obviously, if you look at their other reports, you're going to find more information in regards to this company as far as what type of system that they have in place with their partners, right? So who's responsible for what? Okay, so I want to point. So here's the thing that I found that a lot of people probably might not recognize. But item 13, subsequent events. In April 2021, the company sold 11,500,000 shares of its common stock at a public offering of $3 per share, pursuant to an underwritten public offering. The net proceeds to the company from the offering, after deducting the underwriting discounts and commissions and offering expensible payable by the company, were approximately $32.6 million. All shares of common stock sold in the offering were sold by the company. They were sold direct to the market. They only had the underwriters that were, putting the process together. So they issued shares. What does that tell you? Well, the shares got diluted by 11.5 million shares. Well, why don't we look at the chart to show us if that is actually true? Well, a couple things that you want to think about. One, that possibly got voted on. I'm going to assume that it was voted on for anyone who was holding the stock, that they issued a proxy vote, and the majority of voters voted that they can dilute the shares, which they issued. So whatever time frame that was, I'd probably assume either in the beginning of the year or at some point last year, but that happened. But let's look at the chart. So we'll do a 6-month range, and pump and dump, pump and dump, pump and dump. We're down to about $3.41 in around March 8th. $3.15. Stock goes up, and then, well, let's keep going. Let's keep going into the future. And wait a minute, oh, $3.04 on April 20th. So you can draw a correlation that the price at this point in April affected what the stock was at that particular point. So when they issued 11.5 million shares in the market, it had in effect caused the stock price to go down, and then it looks like more people were buying to drive that stock up. So obviously, if you start looking at the SEC filings and you start seeing the purchases, insiders have to report when they make purchases. So I'm going to make a wild assumption that maybe it was part of their warrants, or a number of shares were reserved for employees. And that's one of the ways, right, that a company can retain employees, by incentivizing employees to own parts of the company. So it's kind of a closed loop system where if someone works for the company and they have shares in the company, well, they have a stake in the success of the company doing well. But on top of that, it eliminates some of the cost that might be associated with paying employees at a much higher rate, where in this case they can avoid some of that. It's a good strategy. A lot of big companies do that along the way, especially since there are larger biotech firms that do offer much better packages and things like that. But again, it's not an examination of whether the company is bad or good. It's just a strategy that helps the financial well-being of the company kind of in the long term. However, because we're looking at and digesting this information about the stocks being that were sold at 11.5, you can extrapolate, or at least come to some idea that there's a correlation between the stock price going down at this particular point and then being able to recover over a period of time. But you can see that there's a pattern occurring with the stock itself as far as its activity in the stock market. So again, as a long-term play, if you're a long-term investor, this could be a good option to consider with as part of your portfolio. However, at the same time, it's something that I would interpret as, you have to manage. For me, it'd be managing my risk with this, as far as, okay, well, there's two ways that this can be approached. It can be approached, in my opinion, as a swing trade, where there are some predictable activities and patterns that reveal themselves in the charts themselves. But at the same time, things like this, where there's a vote to dilute the shares and get them issued in the market, also paints a picture of one, the company itself is not able to sustain its financials, so they have to add more shares to the market. So in this instance right here, I look at this as, the company received $32 million because they couldn't fulfill the need to sustain their operating income or their financials to keep on going. So one of the ways that they do that, again, it's not in itself a bad thing that a company does this, but you have to look at it in a lot of different perspectives, where, what's the positive that comes from it? Obviously, when there's an injection of money that goes to the company, and then that gives them the ability to operate at a much longer time frame, because at this instance here, they do have the underwriters that are going through the process of them being able to issue the shares, but the funding itself goes directly to the company, so they get the money up front. The bad part is, when you add an additional number of shares, it decreases the value of the total number of shares that are out there in the market. So again, those are only the two things, but there are other aspects of that you want to take into consideration, or at least I would take into consideration when I'm looking at a company like this. On top of that, like I said, and I can't stress this enough, if anyone's been following what's been going on with the economy, it's not really the best place that we're going to be at. So companies like this that need to dilute shares or need to acquire funding from other sources other than sales, because right now they're not at that particular step in the company's life cycle, so they need to be able to acquire funds, and that in itself is the risk over a period of time. However, if you have conviction in a stock like this, that you recognize that this company could be a high flyer in the future, in the near future, or in the future, this is something to consider when looking at something like this, that you have to parse out all the information that you're given, and then you ultimately make the decision to come up with something that's going to work for you. However, again, there are a lot of different risks that are involved with something like this, that you do have to take into consideration. If you look at a company like Amazon or Facebook or Google, those types of companies themselves already are already generating revenue, where they are where it's already proven that they're making money. But on top of that, they already reestablish where their funding goes, and they have a lot of different channels where money comes in. So that's something to take into consideration, that maybe you want to be able to have kind of a balanced portfolio, right? Where you have some that are kind of the safer, and then you have these ones where, it's kind of like the lottery. So again, but there are positive signs for a company like SYBX, where, like I said, it's backed by a lot of institutions, but that in itself does not guarantee that a stock does well. And I know that from particular experience, that does not guarantee the success of a company. It just shows, just at forefront, that a company is backed by institutions. That's it. If you take out all the other noise, and then you just focus on what that means, is that the companies themselves are just backed by institutions, so big money or smart money, whatever you want to call it. So that was SYBX, symbol Sierra Yankee Bravo X-ray. Okay, I had to look up the symbol again. So in itself, take it with a grain of salt. This might help you make decisions on whether or not this company does well. And even if you have particular biases about certain things, it's always good to kind of just unfold some of the information that's available, or as much information that's available, and then think as best you can about the decision that you're going to make, and whether or not it's going to be right for you. But I can tell you right now, like I said, just based on the information that's available to the public, this is a company that's not generating revenue from making sales. This is a company that's generating revenue from injection of money, either they get from stocks or from partners or from institutions. So there's a lot of different areas where this company generates money, but also carries with it a lot of risk because of that. Okay, so it's not a self-sustaining system, at least at this vantage point of the company's life cycle. So for cTheories, before I get into, there's going to be a little bit of digression here, and I kind of changed what my schedule was of the topics that I was going to talk about. But because we're still in the conversation about stocks, one of the things that I absolutely despise is FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And that comes from all different spectrums, okay? And the problem that I have are these wackos that make it a thing to make something like this is not some known concept, and everything becomes this strange conspiracy. So describing here, all right, it's not a conspiracy. And anyone who's been investing for a long time are aware about institutional holders, companies like BlackRock. And I watched a video on TikTok where this person was talking about, BlackRock there's great conspiracy and this and that. Listen, okay? If you've been investing for a long time, or if you've even paid attention to your retirement portfolio, listen, your retirement portfolio will have, okay, companies like Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Pfizer, Moderna, like these people, either they're unaware of what goes on in the financial markets, or they're just trying to create this really crazy idea that, that is, everything's this conspiracy. It's like, no, if you paid attention, if you read about some of these things even before they became cTheories, you would know that these things exist. So any of those people that are virtue signaling, both on the one end, if you're like a crazy environmentalist who thinks that like, oh yeah, the stock market is bad, you're on the other side of that spectrum, right? Because again, look at your retirement portfolio and you're going to see that it's going to be pretty ugly as far as what you believe and what your current values are. So the virtue signaling that comes from, I guess we'll say the different political spectrums, and then you got the people that are talking about, these institutions that are, bad, and oh, they own all these different companies. Dude, just one on my portfolios alone, I have like 40 or 50 companies. Like, guy, shut your trap. Like, I got so fed up, right? Like seeing some of these videos out there. So I posted a comment. I was like, tell me that you never looked at your retirement portfolio without telling me. And that's basically what it is. These people, like, this one thing that you're doing your due diligence with, understanding concepts and comparing information from other information and then putting it together. But outwardly just coming out and saying that something is a C theory or whatever like that, without actually not knowing about what's out there, I think is doing a great disservice to people who who might be skeptical about what's going on. Okay, and on top of that, the funny part too is you're on these platforms. Are there things that these companies are doing or the government's not doing that's conducive to our own beliefs? A government and companies are a certain entity. They're only going to satisfy us. They're not going to satisfy everybody, right? And at the same time, and I'm playing devil's advocate here with what's going on, because obviously I have my personal views, but it's stuff like this that people just are not familiar with the information that are going out there, and they make it into something that is a lot more overboard. And I like to think that I do put quite a bit of effort into researching content. But that was, those are some of the things that, as someone who actively engages in trading and investing, right? One of a key factor that helps me locate companies that I'll have a little bit more confidence in is companies like BlackRock. If BlackRock is heavily invested in a company, that would give you at least a semblance of confidence that a large institution is going to put money into something that you're going to be putting your dollars into. A prime example is AMC. So for the people that are out there that are trying to create this divide with information, all right, it's, if you have a question, in my opinion, if you have a question and you want to validate those questions that you have, well, don't stop with just, oh, hey, the BlackRocks and the Vanguards and whatever else it is, because look at other information that might contradict what we're thinking, right? yeah, it's kind of a pain. It's kind of a pain to consider that, but at the same time, we need to have information, and we need to have that type of conversation where it challenges our own beliefs. That's how we learn, at least from my opinion. But it was doing such a great disservice, and there was a number of different, a number of different people that were commenting like, oh yeah, yeah, this person is right. It's like, no, this person is wrong. This person is wrong, right? And that's I think one of the problems, and the problem that was stemmed from using social media and having the internet with services like Amazon and Netflix and all that stuff, where we get to decide when and what we want to watch and what we want to consume, um, also has caused, in effect, or was the result of being able to have that ability, right? Now creates this echo chamber in this, very small hole of a view of the world that we're creating, not only for ourselves, but I think for others as well. And I think, like I said, in most instances, right, I would talk about kind of the more skeptical side of this perspective. But being someone who's been doing this, and I'm not trying to defend companies like BlackRock and Vanguard. I'm just saying that you can't go out there and and just take information, a snippet of information that that someone might not have much information about or not know much about, right? And then immediately call it a conspiracy. Like, no, dude, no. Because there's a lot of information that is public out there for companies like BlackRock, and I'm sure, on an ethical level, yeah, maybe there are situations where they're not agreeable, but at the same time, at the same time, there's certain aspects of it, like I have a few buddies they claim to be environmentalists, right? But they'll go out camping and they'll spray insect repellent in the air, and then on trees, and do all this stuff that's would completely harm the environment. It has that same side to it. So even the people that are skeptical, right, with what's going on in the stock market and stuff like that, it's 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 not just those types of things. And I'd hate for people to be misinformed about that type of stuff, because like I said, as someone who's been active in this space, it's important to at least to point it's important to point out that sometimes, even on the skeptical side of things, we have to take into consideration that maybe even those skeptical people could be off in their information. So I'm just opening up Pandora's box there. And I think that's really all the time that we have. There was other topics that I was going to go into, but that was one in particular that needed some attention, in my opinion. Again, because like I said, if you look here, oh, we got Vanguard. Oh, they own $3 million, at least based on this date reported, of this company, Sign Logics. All right. So call it what it is, but don't be spreading FUD. I mean, there's FUD on across different levels. All right. Like I said, with things like AMC, these big institutions like the BlackRocks and the Vanguards own AMC. Whether they're covering their short positions or whether they're looking at it from a different vantage point. These are professionals in the financial industry, and they know what they're doing. So at the same time, what you want to do for people that out there that's skeptical, ask yourself why. Ask yourself why, right? Because these people, whether they went to school or they learned it while doing it, they understand certain aspects of it that other people might not. So it's the same thing with any other type of industry that's out there, right? Everything appears like magic, or it's like witchcraft, until you're actually in that space yourself, then you have a different perspective on it. But that in itself too can obviously flip the perspective, or make the perspective of that particular thing be what you believe is right. And that's not necessarily a wrong thing or a bad thing in itself. It's just there's different perspectives that are being tossed around. But I think one of the warnings I just want to suggest for those who are a little bit skeptical about what's going on in this world today is that take a step back, look at the big picture, learn a little bit more about what's going on, or whatever it is that we're researching, and to not, in my opinion, is just not make conclusions right away. And that's all I have. So thank you guys very much for watching this video. I hope it was informative. I hope you enjoyed it. And I got a little riled up there, but I think I have every reason to. So make sure you like, subscribe, all that fun YouTube algorithm stuff. And I'll see you guys next week. Thank you very much.